General Grievous and Plo Koon. A showdown between one of the greatest Jedi killers in the known galaxy and one of the greatest Jedi Master who flies right under the radar. In a holocron we released not too long ago, we explained how Dooku named 4 distinct Jedi Masters that Grievous could never hope to defeat in his own opinion. He listed Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Grandmaster Yoda, and most surprisingly, the Jedi Battle Master Sin Dralig. But what Dooku neglected was that there were others who stand a very real chance at defeating the Cyborg killer. Anakin Skywalker would undoubtedly triumph. Kit Fisto came within a hand's breadth of ending the droid general's life. But both of these men are on the upper echelon of the Jedi High Council. But that leaves us with yet another master who has proven himself to be quite capable. One of the greatest fighters in Star Wars, Plo Koon. While his duelist feats are found in the extended material, you all seem to agree with us that Plo Koon stands a very tangible chance of taking down Grievous. So greetings acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. In today's video, we are coming to you with a good old-fashioned hypothetical versus battle. We will be measuring their strength, skills, power, and feats of both Plo Koon and the droid general. And hopefully by the end, we can determine whether the kind-hearted Kel Dor warrior has the right kind of stone in his sling to bring down the droid Goliath. If you enjoy this type of video and want to see more like it, then force crush that subscribe button and comment down below what fight you want next. But now my friends, the battlefield is set. Let's begin. As with all discussions surrounding Grievous, we need to first establish the incarnation that we're going to be selecting. There exist 2 versions of the character which quickly are labeled as Canon Grievous and Legends Grievous. In canon, the droid general is portrayed as being slower, a hulking brute when fighting. While he has a distinct bloodthirst for Jedi and laughs with insidious glee at their suffering, Canon Grievous is a slimeball and a coward. If he perceives that he cannot win a fight, he will flee. This is in stark contrast to Legends Grievous, who is shown to be an unstoppable machine of death and war. He does not care if the odds are stacked against him, because Grievous embodies a type of power that turns the odds on their head. He's blindingly fast on his feet and impossibly powerful. He seems to have absolutely no fear, and has taken down even groups of the best Jedi Masters. The reason this exists is because the Clone Wars 2003 team were only given a picture model of General Grievous before Revenge of the Sith. All they were told is that he would eventually be killed in that film, and George hadn't yet fully decided on how he wanted to portray the droid general in live action. And so the Clone Wars team at the time, led by Genndy Tartakovsky, had to imagine for themselves how such a being would move and how he would fight. And so they made Grievous a terrifying, unstoppable monster that could rival even the best of the Jedi. However, famously, this didn't go so well with George Lucas because he felt as though that portrayal overshadowed the Jedi-killing machine that was supposed to be Darth Vader. Along these lines, he wanted Grievous to present a more visceral threat to Obi-Wan, so he made him move and fight with much more weight, which also translated better to live action than the floaty, agile design that we see in 2003. Not only this, but George also made Grievous more slimy in the 2008 series, and Lucas claimed that he wanted to go for a mustache-twirling Saturday morning cartoon villain archetype rather than the brutal Jedi butcher that he was in the 2003 series. With all of that though, this has created a divide between the 2 continuities, and which version of Grievous is considered the true version. Typically on the channel, we stick very closely to Legends, but a lot of the actions that Grievous takes, including his near loss to Kit Fisto, is also technically considered Legends. This may have created a problem for us, but luckily we've been saved by the EU writers. Star Wars Insider Magazine number 86 gives us an answer which bridges the gap between the 2 incarnations of the character. In the comics and other extended material, it is revealed that Grievous actually has repulsor lift elements incorporated into his limbs. This wasn't meant to suggest that Grievous could float or fly, but when they were activated, they could help him easily move the bulk of his arms and his body around. This allowed the droid general his arms and legs to become much lighter and much more agile if need be. So what is the true version of Grievous? Well, both. The general essentially switches between a heavy mode and a fast mode depending on the circumstances he finds himself in. Or perhaps a more accurate descriptor would be a powered down mode and an OP mode. And when Grievous found himself fighting a group of Jedi Masters, he has to have as much mobility as possible. And again, during the Battle of Coruscant, Grievous also uses these elements when fighting yet another team of Jedi when he captured the Chancellor. In both of these situations, those repulsor lift elements were warranted. Compare this to the 2008 Grievous, who is almost always shown fighting a single Jedi. He likely doesn't believe he needs to be faster, and instead relies on the more overwhelming strength components of his cybernetic body. When he is shown fighting multiple people though, it's always the lesser opponents such as clone troopers, Gungans, or Night Sisters. In this regard, Grievous is so arrogant that he believes that just using his forearms is enough, and doesn't bother with any extra speed. There may have also been a chance that those repulsor lift elements may have a limited charge, and Grievous didn't want to use and waste them, but this hasn't been confirmed. We say all of this to get to this point. We will be melding both versions of Grievous into one so that we can take into account all of his feats. But instead of calling one canon and the other legends, we will call it powered down and OP. Luckily, Plo Koon isn't so complicated as Grievous, so we can just keep him as he is. So with all of that out of the way and Grievous established, let's talk about our fighters, starting with the Jedi Master. The Force runs extremely strong in the line of Plo Koon. It was said of his lineage that they were much like the Skywalkers, in that their bloodline was continually potent in the Force. On his native homeworld of Doran, many of Plo Koon's family had been Barrandau sages. These workers of the light side harnessed their Force sensitivity in order to protect deadly storms that ravage their world and guide their people to safety. But those that did not join the Barrandau would be a part of the Jedi Order. Such people would include both his uncle and his niece, Sha Koon. But while Plo acknowledged this running trait in his family, he never made it a point to really rely on. He allowed his natural talent in the Force to carry him through his studies swiftly, but was never lazy. In fact, Plo Koon's dedication to the Jedi way was so unwavering, as was his discipline. He was noted as being entirely fearless and sharply pragmatic. Plo was known for being able to make fast decisions, which was why he was an excellent warrior and a superb pilot. All of these traits already make him a problem for Grievous. As we stated earlier, Grievous's best weapon to use against Jedi is fear, surprise, and intimidation. It is this that makes a Jedi lose their focus. And for those of you that don't know, this is the reason why most Jedi do not use the Force on Grievous. It would be much easier to force push or to crush him, but the general uses his many arms to intimidate, to overwhelm a Jedi's senses. This is his first goal. The Jedi are so afraid and put off by Grievous that they cannot gather their focus. This disrupts their very connection to the Force itself. Not only does this keep them from using the Force against Grievous, but it throws them off balance so that their blade work becomes sloppy. With that said though, this advantage is immediately mitigated by men like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Windu, Kit Fisto, and of course Plo Koon. All of them who are entirely fearless. To Plo, Grievous was not a monster to be feared, he was a criminal to be punished. This goes back to his people. The Kel Dor people are known for seeing morality in black or white. On Doran, doing good is not a kindness, it is an expectation. All crime is perceived as equal in severity. A murderer and a thief both receive capital punishment on Doran. The system may be cut and dry to the point of ruthlessness, but this is how the Kel Dor remain in the light side. They do not change their moral stance. Right is right and wrong is wrong. It's not really so much of a choice that they make as it is how their species functions. Plo is obviously the same, but he tempers this with his famous compassion. To many of the younger members of the Order, he is seen as a paternal figure with a deep connection to the living Force. But Plo chooses to value all life no matter what form it comes in. He was the first to rescue infants like Ahsoka when they are in desperate need, whether they're Force sensitive or not, and he most famously saw each one of his clone troopers as unique. Just like Yoda, he could see the clones in the Force. He could perceive that each one was very different from the other. And to many military leaders of the Republic, clones were expendable like droids, simply because they could be grown and replaced. But not to Plo Koon. During the Malevolence Crisis, which was appropriately for this video involved Grievous, Master Plo Koon put his life on the line and at risk to save a life pod filled with clones. His fearlessness is not just a product of his species' moral code, it is a result from his intense desire to protect and cultivate all forms of life, to defend the weak and to exercise justice on those who exploit them. This is the way of Plo Koon, and this is why he made himself into one of the most formidable Jedi of his era. But what about combat? Plo demonstrated his mastery of combat both in terms of the lightsaber and especially when unarmed. He was considered one of the Order's best fighters, measuring up to the likes of even Mace Windu. Qui-Gon Jinn even commented that he was an excellent swordsman and a hard taskmaster. Even Darth Maul had something positive to say regarding Master Koon. Maul, as an apprentice, was notoriously arrogant and believed himself beyond any Jedi in the Order beside the upper echelons of the High Council like Yoda. But in the novel Darth Maul Shadowhunter, he says this: he longed to battle one of the truly great Jedi warriors, Plo Koon perhaps, or Mace Windu. That would be a true test of his skill. For one as arrogant as Maul to group Plo Koon in the same ring as Mace Windu when it comes to being a challenge is truly saying something about Plo Koon's skill, and his reputation absolutely preceded him. Plo Koon was a master of Form 5 variant Djem So, the one specifically designed for dueling using raw strength. This actually suited the Jedi Master quite well, as he was very physically powerful. Plo's strength and endurance were absolutely off the charts. He was capable of physically picking up and hurling fully grown humanoids, and he once fought off an entire group of armed thugs with his bare hands. By utilizing his strength in the Djem So form, he gained a reputation in the Council as being a challenge for any Jedi. Yet once again, it was his kind heart which tempered his brutal hand. Plo would be the best exemplifier of how a Jedi was meant to use this aggressive lightsaber form. Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, who also used this form for much of his life, noted that it had to be used with great compassion for one's enemy. To batter through their defenses and take them down with swiftness was a mark of mercy. This was because aggression was meant to end fights quickly for a Jedi. Using great power to destroy an opponent's opposition would ideally make them surrender, or put them down before they could mount a heavier resistance. But this aggression had to be used with compassion. A wise Jedi knew when their enemy was beaten, and therefore knew when to alleviate the attack. This was Plo Koon's speciality. He was so proficient in Form 5 that he went blow for blow with Savage Opress on one occasion, and he even managed to stonewall the monster before his face mask was ripped off to forcefully end the encounter. In terms of defense, his body was incredibly dense, allowing him to take significant amount of punishment in fights. It's been shown that Plo Koon can survive in the vacuum of space for an extended period of time without using the pressurized envirosuit that is common for clones. This was helped of course by his breathing mask, which he wears at all times. His durability also extends to having an extraordinary pain tolerance. During one mission, Plo Koon had a broken arm and would be forced into a duel with none other than Ventress. In the duel, he fought her one-handed, and when she kicked him right in the arm, he shrugged it off and released a force push that sent her flying. Despite having to fight against both her sabers without the use of his left arm, the Jedi still disarmed the assassin of one of her lightsabers. He then also made her fail her mission by using the force to take a remote detonator off of her belt. Eventually, Kit Fisto had some clones arrive and would send Ventress into a full-on retreat. Despite this not being considered an overwhelming victory, had Plo Koon's arm not been broken, he clearly would have defeated Dooku's assassin here. Ventress is of course an exceptionally skilled warrior, handling the likes of Obi-Wan and Anakin together in times previous. And in Legends, she's one of the few individuals to successfully tag Anakin Skywalker, administering the scar to Anakin's right eye, something she did to toy with the Jedi. And yet, with a non-functional arm, Plo Koon sent her packing. But as we know, raw strength is not everything, especially in a fight against Grievous. Ki-Adi-Mundi was an incredibly skilled warrior, and was an expert in Form 5 as well. And yet, he still almost failed against the droid general. But what separates Plo Koon is that he's incredibly fast and agile. Along with Djem So, he is also familiar with Form 4 Ataru. This gives him a much better edge in mobility than most Form 5 users have. The combination of the 4th and the 5th lightsaber styles is a deadly combination. Anakin Skywalker also used this combo in his own personal style as well, as he supplemented Djem So's lack of mobility with Ataru footwork, which enabled him to not only bound across the battlefield with ease, but also generating momentum, something that Djem So specializes in. Using Force speed, Plo Koon also does this. During the Clone Wars, he managed to slice through Aurra Sing's blaster right before she could fire them. This is significant because Aurra Sing is Force sensitive, and known to be a Jedi killer, especially with her blasters. And yet, Plo crossed the room and disarmed her before she could open fire. On a separate occasion, a clone trooper watched a flurry of blue light suddenly descend upon a droid platoon, and in the time it took him to say, "What is that?" just 3 words, Plo Koon had already sliced through dozens of battle droids. The light side of the Force rewards steadfast resolve with power the same way that the dark side rewards passion and ambition. And for Plo Koon's service as a true Jedi, he is rewarded with many gifts in the Force. Kel Dor naturally gifted with the abilities of the mind due to the extrasensory organs on their head. This is enhanced, however, by Plo Koon, who is incredibly talented with precognition and telepathy. Jedi are typically able to relay their thoughts to fellow Force wielders by projecting vague impressions, simple directives, or simply emotions. Very few Jedi can actually send fully worded messages. Of those that can, Plo Koon is one of them. He is telepathically linked with other Jedi across vast distances, and relayed entire paragraphs of worded information to them through their mindscape alone. And while this is not technically something useful for his battle against Grievous, we wanted to mention it because it's just an impressive mind skill nonetheless. But what will be important to this battle, and with Grievous alone, is his power of electric judgment. This power was previously known to the Jedi, but they classified it as a forbidden technique due to how closely it resembled that of Sith lightning. but Plo Koon was able to use it because of his Kel Dor background. As we said earlier, many in the line of Koon served as Baron Do sages, and while Plo himself was never a sage, he did spend a lot of time training with them, and he was familiar with many of their more secretive techniques. Do not make a mistake, the sages are not militaristic in any way, but they do harness their powers to plumb the more esoteric aspects of the light side and its abilities. This allows them very unique powers over electricity, which they call the Hasat Dur. This control over low-level electromagnetism allows them to change how their own brave waves appear on scanners, and can even produce white force lightning at a very advanced level. But while Plo Koon would have understood the ways of the Hasat Dur, he was never officially taught the Kel Dor white lightning technique because the skill only belonged to the highest masters of the Baron Do sages. Instead though, he discovered his version of lightning purely on instinct alone. Plo was happened to be chasing a criminal by the name of Pommel, who took a little girl hostage to cover his escape. Let's now read this account from the entry in the Great Holocron, where we can find Plo Koon's account. The suite was spacious, and I was separated from Pommel by a distance of 15 meters. Keeping an eye on me, Pommel began pulling the crying girl, I estimate her to be about 5 years old, out through a wide doorway, beyond which I could see a small ship that rested at the suite's private landing pad. Obviously his intent was to escape, and he considered the child his insurance. I had no reason to doubt that he would eventually kill the child, even if I allowed them to board the escape vessel, for I could see what he'd done to the girl's parents and siblings. Their bodies lay upon the floor of the inner suite. In hindsight, there were many possible tactics I may have employed to apprehend Pommel and rescue the child, but I did not consider any options or calculate angles of attack as I watched him drag her towards the ship. I believe I acted instinctively when I extended my right arm toward Pommel and released a barrage of lightning. I know that the Jedi Council was hesitant to send me on the assignment soon after the death of Master Tyvaka, my own Jedi Master, but I did not let loose with Force Lightning the way undisciplined beings might release stress. Like other Jedi, I learned of Force Lightning at the temple, and I am very well aware that it is regarded as a dark side power. I never had any special interest in Force Lightning at all, or felt compelled to experiment with it, but I knew it was at least in me an innate ability and power. I did not feel anger as I directed the lightning at Pommel's head, nor did I fear for the girl's safety. I was calm and in control of my faculties. I merely acted to end the situation before any more innocents were dead. Upon being struck by the first bolt, Pommel reacted as anticipated, as the shock seized his systems. His arm flew out and away from his body, releasing both the blaster and the child who fell to the landing pad. A second bolt ensured that Pommel would remain unconscious until local authorities arrived. I was never tempted to deal any sort of killing blow. After this, the High Council asked that Plo Koon meditate on whether he would use or hesitate to use Force Lightning, and whether he was wrong to employ this form of it. But after much meditation, Plo stated that he believed it would be wrong of him to ignore this power, and wished that he could develop it into a useful technique for combat. He developed the power known as Electric Judgment. This orange-colored Force Lightning proved to be a non-lethal variant meant for stunning opponents rather than causing intense pain or death. His impressive talents in the Force extend to telekinesis as well though. Many times, the Kel Dor Jedi Master has been seen using Force pushes in the middle of combat. His pushes are noted to be strong enough to send several enemies flying in various directions. He also shoved a spider droid to the ground so hard that it deactivated on impact. Plo also did not neglect some of the lesser known Jedi powers such as Tutaminis or Force Absorb, and he even knew some of Malacia. Malacia is the Force ability that disrupts a target's internal equilibrium, causing them to become dizzy and nauseous. The body works against the subject, forcing them to collapse, sometimes even resulting in vomiting. Along with all of this, Plo was a master with the Alter Environment skill. This was the Force ability that allowed Jedi to interact with the living Force that surrounded them, to use the natural world as a weapon. During an event known as the Yinchori Uprising, Plo Koon would pull a massive sheet of fog to cover his Jedi team's escape from a mission which had gone horribly wrong. And that, my friends, is Plo Koon, a Jedi with an unwavering morality that was informed by equal parts justice and compassion. He is fearless, focused, determined. His power was a cut above most Jedi, and he was so dangerous that he was considered a top priority of Order 66. However, despite all of his strength, he was not without any weaknesses. The planet Doran's atmosphere was largely comprised of helium, and all Kel Dor wear what is known as a anti-tox mask when off of the world. These masks protected them from oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide, all of which is toxic to their people. The goggles also protected their eyes from harsh sunlight from other worlds, which was very harsh on their eyes since Doran was very dim. As it was shown in the battle with Savage, if his breathing mask is in any way compromised, then Plo Koon will be immediately out for the count. And now we move to the challenger, General Grievous. Here is how the Revenge of the Sith novelization describes Grievous. The Separatist Supreme Commander is an abomination of nature, a fusion of flesh and droid, and his droid parts have more compassion than what remains of his alien flesh. The half-living creature is a slaughterer of billions. Whole planets have burned at his command. He is the evil genius of the Confederacy, the architect of their victories, the author of their atrocities. In direct contrast to the Jedi Plo Koon, Grievous is an absolute monster. Not just a monstrous being, one of a hulking size of terrifying power, but a monster of heart. Though his organic heart continued to beat beneath the alloy chestplate, it was as black as coal. Grievous is the most notorious Jedi killer of this era, the proof in which was sown with his grim collection of lightsabers. His hatred of the Jedi is the only thing that drives him. He cares not for politics of the Republic or the Separatists. He is not driven by greed. There is nothing to be gained for him in this war. He is in it for revenge and for blood. He strives for a galaxy to be devoid of Jedi, to take immense pleasure in every barbaric step that he takes, each death that brings him closer to that goal. And although Grievous has no force feats to account for, and his measurements less straightforward than that of Plo Koon's since we cannot make a distinction between powered down and the OP mode, but we'll begin with his cybernetic enhancements, strength, and his durability, since those basically remain all the same, and then we'll talk about his speed and combat ability, which will be different between his two settings. General Grievous was designed by the Sith, Tyrannus, and Sidious to be the perfect Jedi killing machine. While the Kaleesh warlord had wanted his mind to be left unaltered, untampered during the cybernetic transformation, Dooku had other plans. He had the Geonosian biotechnicians alter his brain chemistry without his knowledge. Such upgrades included the installation of combat programming. This would make him smarter and faster to make up for the fact that he could not touch the Force. When operating at peak level, a Jedi can react a little less than relative to the speed of light, so Grievous would need many cybernetic upgrades to ensure his mind and body were placed on equal footing with that. To accomplish this, his brain tissue was wired directly into the electrical signals of his cybernetic body, allowing him to essentially move as fast as he could think. However, his memory center was also changed due to suppressing memories of his past and to increase his latent aggression. Grievous was a brilliant warlord of the past who was truly embraced by the way of the Sith, and who in turn embraced the Sith. The general's body featured magnetized talons to clamp onto the deck of a starship or even victims. This was something that he would make quite frequent use of, using his claws feet as an extra limb to grab and throw enemies around. His eyes were also cybernetically enhanced to allow them to survive in a vacuum. Same for his gut sac and all internal organs, which were all replaced with synth flesh. But his physical strength is perhaps his most terrifying attribute. He has easily crushed the skulls of humanoids with his bare hands, as he did with the Jedi Master Sun Bates, in a horrific display. Later, with his full body, he dropped down and smashed Sha Gi. He has physically overpowered Dirge, and easily threw him across a room, sending him crashing through several museum exhibits. Grievous has also repeatedly been shown to have enough strength to crack or outright shatter panes of transparasteel. Keep in mind, transparasteel is not glass. It is actually a malleable type of metal pressed into thin, transparent sheets that retain nearly all of the metal's durability, while still offering visibility from it. This was why it was choice for all starships. We've seen just one of Grievous's punches dent the hull of his own starfighter when he fought Obi-Wan, and he was able to completely smash an entire ship console in one strike. Those are impressive, but his most shocking display of strength is when he crushed a Mandalorian helmet underfoot. This happens in the Son of Dathomir comic. Although it is unknown whether the helmet was made of Durasteel or Beskar, some Mandalorians were known to use Durasteel for their armor, especially those that was mass-produced for lower-ranking troops. The helmet in question belonged to a prison guard, so it very well could have been Durasteel, which is impressive enough. But if it was Beskar on the off chance, then that puts Grievous's strength on an entirely separate level. His armor plating was made of Durasteel composite duranium, as well as armorplast. Armorplast was a lightweight and a ceramic version of Durasteel. It was extremely expensive but very durable, able to easily withstand even blaster shots. This was only used for top priority projects within the CIS, so far which only included Grievous and the LM-432 crab droids. Grievous has been repeatedly shown to withstand heavy blaster fire from clone trooper squadrons, and even dodge explosives and tank them at close range. Grievous has managed to tank thermal detonators, sonic grenades, and even missiles on multiple occasions. One of those missiles he took at point-blank range during the Battle of Coruscant. He also survived being at the center of an explosion which ended up devastating an underground city. But his feats go further. In Legends, Dooku had Grievous fight and he beat both Dirge and Ventress together as a test of strength. In that fight, Dirge would electrify him with shock bolas, opening up for an opportunity to Ventress to cut him down. Dirge also hit him with a haymaker that sent Grievous smashing through several stone fixtures into the hull of a vehicle. Grievous shrugged all of this off and didn't show any signs of slowing. But with strength, now let's move on to speed and combat ability. This is where things get really interesting. Trained by Dooku, Grievous is familiar with all of the traditional forms of lightsaber combat, and while Dooku considered him to be brutish and unrefined, considering Grievous did not have the Force, Dooku still believed that he was far more dangerous than Ventress, who could use the Force. The general combined his Kaleesh sword fighting with the Jedi lightsaber forms to create an unknown hybridized style that can change on the fly. His main form of attacking his enemies was to immediately overpower them with either sheer strength or overwhelming them with his many arms. But this was only the beginning. With his mechanically and cybernetically enhanced mind, Grievous was able to read his opponent's tactics at light speed and find ways of working around their strengths, exploiting their weaknesses. He is even able to copy their fighting styles if he observes it long enough and with great detail. On one occasion, Grievous nearly learned how to use Vaapad, imitating Mace Windu's movements. Windu believed that the forgery was convincing enough to immediately break off all engagements so that the droid general could not learn any more. One thing Grievous also does, which we mentioned earlier, was use his feet. Regardless of whatever mode he is in, he will kick, claw, or throw his enemies around with his talons. In some cases, he can even wield lightsabers with his feet if he wants to. The animators of the 2003 Clone Wars series based Grievous's fighting style off of the Afro-Brazilian martial art, the capoeira. This frequently employs kicks in a very energetic and an acrobatic fashion, almost like breakdancing. Grievous uses these unorthodox attacks with his feet to throw off Jedi battle precognition and to keep them from predicting whatever he may do next. This falls in line with his other favorite tactic, dirty tricks. Grievous will use anything and everything it takes to either get the advantage or escape. This includes using blasters in combat like he did against Nadar Veb. Within his body, he also keeps electrical cables to shock and torture his victims, something he used against Shaak Ti. Even in powered down mode, Grievous has taken on several Jedi at once, and cut them all down while mocking them. But things get really dicey when he activates the repulsor lift functions in his limbs to go into OP mode, as we named it. As we mentioned, this usually only happens when he's facing multiple Jedi, and then he very rarely, if ever, will employ these functions against a single target. On Hypori, the droid general made his grand entrance in the war by using these functions to totally decimate a Jedi strike team. Even more impressive considering it consisted of Shaak Ti, Tar Saer, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Aayla Secura, and Kakruk. During that battle, he didn't even use his four-armed function, but simply 2 arms and his feet. And just by doing that, Grievous was able to outclass several well-renowned Jedi Masters and Jedi Knights. Grievous broke the mind of the Padawan Shaggy in the beginning of the fight and smashed him to the ground. The very powerful Jedi Master Kakruk was the next to be defeated by the General's saber skill, and Tar Saer and Aayla Secura were both grabbed and simultaneously thrown far into the ceiling by the General's feet. Aayla barely managed to survive, and Tar Saer would die on impact. Shaak Ti held out, but was ultimately disarmed. The council member only survived by force pushing herself away from Grievous's saber, but was still hit by a pile of debris much too hard. Ki-Adi-Mundi was the one who held out the longest, as one of the strongest members of the council, and again a reminder a practitioner of Form 5 as well as Plo Koon. Mundi is the closest we get to see of someone of Plo Koon's level fighting General Grievous. He managed to survive this encounter until the ARC troopers arrived, but Mundi was disarmed and nearly killed right as they did. A lot of this was due to just how fast Grievous was. When in OP mode, he gets no small speed increase whatsoever. Grievous is able to move and jump around with so much ability that he has avoided force attacks. It is not a basic upgrade. Many wonder why Jedi don't just use the Force against Grievous far more often, and this is why. If he doesn't use fear to completely break their ability to tap into it, he then goes to his next option, which is to dodge, or, as shown in the Battle of Coruscant, tank it. The Ithorian Roron Korob used 4 throats to unleash a force bellow. This sound wave was so powerful that it ripped apart an entire corridor and tore metal sheets from the Coruscant streets. But Grievous was able to transform his body into a tight pod and to use his claw's feet to remain rooted. He even managed to resist the bellow enough to march towards the Jedi, gripping the ground with his feet. We've not only seen him dodge force attacks, but he's also outrun the pinpoint accurate blaster fire of ARC troopers, those wielding miniguns. He even managed to avoid the cannons and missile barrage of the LAAT gunship. But with all of this, we think the novelization of Revenge of the Sith paints a very colorful picture of just how fast Grievous really is. The electro drivers that powered Grievous's limbs could move them faster than the human eye can see, and when he swung his arm, it, and his fist, and the lightsaber within it would literally vanish, wiped from existence by sheer mind-numbing speed, an imitation quantum event. No human being could even move remotely as fast as Grievous, not even Obi-Wan Kenobi. In the duel on Utapau, we actually get figures on just how fast Grievous can move, again thanks to the novel. The novel actually has Grievous use his OP mode in this duel with Kenobi, knowing that the fight will require all he has to take down the Negotiator. The electro drivers powering Grievous's mechanical arms let each of the 4 attacks thrice in a single second, integrated by combat algorithms in the biodroid's electronic network of peripheral processors. Each of the 12 strikes per second came from a different angle, with a different speed and intensity, creating an unpredictability broken rhythms of slashes, chops, and stabs of which every single one could take Obi-Wan's life. With all of that though, Grievous was not getting through the Master of Cerisu's defenses, and so he began to ramp up his strike speed until he was inflicting 16, 18, and then finally his max, 20 strikes per second. This at last overwhelmed even Obi-Wan, the man who was said to be the Master of Cerisu, the Master of Defense. We are told that this was only due to Obi-Wan sinking as deep as possible into the Force that he was able to avoid Grievous's further strikes, and at that point, he was described as moving faster than thought. At this point in the video, it would be redundant to recount just how many Jedi Grievous has killed, and how many of them were considered to be top duelists of the Order. But as powerful as Grievous was, he was not without his weaknesses either. The first of these was that while his armor was extremely durable, it was not lightsaber resistant. This was proven when Obi-Wan began hacking off his mechanical limbs, and when Ventress scored him on the back. Secondly, his vital organs are his weak points. Although they're protected by his chest plate, the armor pieces are able to be separated by human strength, as seen by Obi-Wan, and once they're exposed, they are a glaring vulnerability, as the Sin flesh is extremely flammable as well. Furthermore, if one is able to focus, the Force can be a powerful ally against Grievous, a crippling one. While he was able to avoid or tank Force attacks, there are other, more creative uses. One can use his body against him. Mace Windu crushed his chest plate, and he nearly crushed his internal organs with it as well. Obi-Wan uses the Force to make the electro drives in the General's fingers spring open, causing him to drop his lightsaber right before it cleaved through Obi-Wan's neck. Obi-Wan also proved that by clearing your mind, becoming one with the Force, you can keep up with Grievous's impossible speed. Easier said than done. And finally, it is true that Grievous is considered a tactical genius, but he is quick to anger because of his mental modification. This clouds his judgment. It causes him to tunnel vision, make mistakes. His rage, arrogance, and cowardice are all his great downfalls. He relies on making his enemy become more panicked, unstable than he is in order to defeat them. But if they remain calm, it's game over. Would that really work on a Jedi like Master Plo Koon? Well, my friends, it's time to find out. The stage is set, the combatants have been described. We have gone into great detail on their strengths, powers, and skills to see how they compare. And now at last, it is time to find out what would happen if Plo Koon were to enter a duel with General Grievous. The tricky part of this duel is determining what Grievous does when entering, but we can use past precedents to know exactly how Grievous will function. He will no doubt open the duel in a powered down mode, just as he had against Kit Fisto. Plo Koon's physical strength and his mastery of Djem So allow him to essentially meet Grievous blow for blow in the beginning. Plo has a counterattack to each one of Grievous's strikes, making it difficult for the general to actually overwhelm him with all these strikes at once. But this is just the beginning. The Jedi Master is also a master battle strategist, and he would be aware that allowing himself to be put on the defense is a bad move. Form 5 is actually weaker on the defense, so we believe that he would employ Ataru footwork to dodge Grievous's strikes rather than attempt to block them outright. Using acrobatics, Plo is able to move around the droid general, keep him from pinning him down. What's really going to help the Jedi in this fight is his ability to remain calm, level-headed. Even when facing insurmountable odds, he will not be shaken into disorder. This allows him to repeat the success of Kit Fisto, being able to employ frequent force pushes against Grievous. But of course, Grievous's insane durability protects him from being outright put down for very long. He resists Plo's force attacks, he presses an advantage. One of the biggest things that the Jedi will need to watch for is Grievous's feet. If Grievous can grab him, smash him into the ground, or manages to crush him, rip off his mask, then the fight is over. Just like that. But Plo is aware of this, and he has a good enough reaction speed to dodge and avoid such tricks. Perhaps if Grievous comes at him with a spare hand or one of his feet, Plo is a good enough practitioner of Form 5 that he may be able to counterattack and remove him of one of his limbs. It's true, Grievous takes down top talented duelists, but he does struggle with the upper tiers of the Jedi High Council. Plo Koon is understood to be on this list of Jedi like Mace, Obi-Wan, and Kit Fisto. Grievous's skill is very good, very high, but it is not on the level of someone like Plo Koon. And in terms of strength, where Grievous is exceptionally powerful, Koon can either match him outright or can avoid him long enough to administer his own crushing blows. If the general remains in his slower, powered down mode, the fight goes handily to Jedi Master Plo Koon. But that isn't all there is to Grievous. As we've seen before, if a single opponent proves to be powerful enough, Grievous does take them seriously and activate the repulsor lift elements, increasing his speed, transferring his mode. In this version, Plo Koon will struggle much more. The most dangerous aspect of this monster is now speed. He will be able to avoid Plo's force pushes to keep the Jedi Master too occupied with the blade to do much else. At just one of his lower levels, Grievous is able to strike 12 times a second, and when he gets frustrated and he begins pushing himself, he can max out at 20 strikes a second. Plo is not a master of the all-defensive form as Obi-Wan is, and even Kenobi found himself on the back foot against this version of the droid general. If the Jedi Butcher utilizes his insane speed, he will be able to keep up with Plo Koon to keep him on a retreat, and probably end his life. But if Mace Windu is able to keep up with this mode of Grievous on Coruscant, and Plo Koon is roughly around the same level, there may be a chance for him to keep up here as well. We believe what really keeps Plo in the fight is his insanely high pain tolerance. On Hypori, most of the Jedi were taken out when they were knocked or thrown around. But Plo shrugs off crippling injuries and keeps himself in the fight. So long as his mask remains intact, he continues to fight until his body gives out. And as long as the Jedi is calm, and he calls upon the Force to flush himself of pain, this is something we cannot see happening. At this point in the duel, Grievous resorts to dirty tricks, and this is where we believe that the Jedi will activate his trap card, his esoteric abilities. Using Alter Environment, he immediately creates a fog cover, much like how Kit Fisto did in the lair of Grievous. Plo would vanish into the fog, start using the guerrilla hit and run tactics. He is a master strategist, and this would be something that he would employ. Now of course, such tricks would not be able to put Grievous down for long, but they're not meant to. They're just meant to rile him up. Comparing them 1-to-1, the two are pretty close in battle IQ, but as a trained Jedi, Plo is just that much better at remaining calm. He is dodging, avoiding him, ducking in and out of the fog for cover, while meeting his strikes strength for strength. The general begins to lose his temper. He is fast, and he is certainly deadly. However, he becomes tunnel-visioned, and he becomes sloppy, prone to mistakes. And this is where the Jedi strikes again, utilizing his knowledge of electromagnetism to really mess with Grievous's body. He disrupts the electrical flows, the electro drives in his hands, causing him to drop his lightsabers. And if Plo Koon is able to open Grievous's chest cavity and hit him with a jolt of electric judgment, this would be enough to light his synth flesh ablaze, his organs consumed by fire. A similar fate to Utapau. The only real thing he would do would be to dodge the lightning, theoretically. We say theoretically because Force Lightning is an ability that Grievous believes only a Sith can use. He's only seen Dooku use the ability. So for a Jedi to go that deep in their bag, we believe it would catch him off guard. This may be the only thing to truly take down Grievous in OP mode, unless Plo Koon is able to land a decisive blow, which is something not even Kenobi or Windu could do. But the Kel Dor Jedi has electric judgment. His regular force powers aren't strong enough to damage Grievous in a significant way. The trick with the electro drivers only works temporarily, and even the fog cover didn't work as well for Fisto, because Grievous was able to predict exactly where he would strike. The duel would be extremely high difficulty. It would push both combatants to their utter limits. Actually, this is one of the closest duels in Star Wars that I can think of, frankly. But if Grievous does manage to get a lock on Plo and overwhelms him with his speed, or is able to rip his mask off, the fight goes to the general. But if the Jedi can disrupt, confuse, frustrate him, he will create a window of opportunity to deal a lethal blow. And if he can't kill him, he stands a real chance at forcing Grievous into a retreat, even in OP mode. If Grievous perceives that he is beaten, he will try to call his Magna Guards, or run, two things that even Dooku would advise him to do. Grievous will never fight to the death unless the death blow catches him by surprise. With all of this being laid out, here at the archives, we give the duel to Jedi Master Plo Koon. He doesn't fully match up in strength or speed, but he has so many resources and skills at his disposal. He's calm, collected, disciplined, centered. He's mastered rare aspects of the Force that Grievous could only ever dream of, and he will not hesitate to do whatever is necessary to win the fight. If anyone deserves to be brought to justice, it is General Grievous. But now, we hand it to you. Who were you rooting for in this versus matchup? Was there something that you think that we missed? And if you think the final fight would go differently, be sure to let us know why. Once again, if you like this video and you want to see more versus matchups, put down your candidates in the comments down below. And until next time, my friends, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and as always, may the Force